Good morning, everybody. I hope you can hear me with our new masks on. We have new ones with the town seal. The town of Montclair seal is a very proud seal. Brian Scantlebury, our former deputy mayor, my colleague on the council, and now deputy manager, always reminded me from 20 years ago when we started, Brian, 1992, almost 20 years ago, this is the real seal of Montclair. Even though we have that fancy seal, you know, with the monument and the orange, this is the seal that goes back 150 years that we celebrated a short time ago. But what we're here to do, just to memorialize and to observe the 9/11 tragedy which occurred 19 years ago. This monument was put together by Rob Bianco, who you all know. Rob Bianco from our own Public Works Department at the time, and Denise Mayer did the plaque. And they all did this as a contribution. The town didn't have to spend much of anything, but Denise Mayer and Rob Bianco, I want to personally thank for doing this. While I was mayor in 2001, just elected, this tragedy occurred. And it was the first responders that are here today, the people from the fire department, EMTs, Montclair Volunteer Ambulance Unit at the time, and the police department that did what had to be done in New York to help our fellow residents and our fellow workers, and 9 victims of the tragedy. Now I just want to read the names, and I like to do this always at about 8:40, 8:45 when the towers fell. So as a former mayor at the time, and as a current council member at large, I want to also introduce my colleague, new council member, 4th Ward Representative David Cummings. So I'd like David to say a few words before I read the names. David?
Thank you, Bob. As Bob said, I'd like to thank all of our first responders, the work that you do, the efforts that you put out daily, every day on behalf of the residents. For me personally, this is somewhat of a solemn day because we buried my mother on September 10th, the day before, and woke up the next day. My whole family was all together, and it was just a tragedy. And what I'll say is that Bob, you, Mr. Russo, have always been a champion and always wanted to make sure that we honor those who we lost. And I think it's important that we do that today, and that we all recognize the tragedy that many families in Montclair lost, because it's not just the immediate families, but the whole township. So I'm here with Bob to recognize that and just say God bless to everyone.
Thank you, David. And I want to make sure everyone knows that our town manager, Tim Stafford, with Brian as deputy manager, helped make sure this gets done. But it's Michelle Camerata and the people from the town recreation parks, everything does this to fix it up. You don't see a lot of blooming yet, but you're going to see a lot of nice, you know, mums very shortly, and the beautiful flowers. But I do want to say that the fire chief and the police chief, and representing the police chief today is our deputy chief, Will Young, are very important to me, as well as our EMT people. But let me turn this just for a second to Will Young to say a few words on behalf of the police department. Will?
Thank you, Councilman. On behalf of the Montclair Police Department and the men and women, first responders all around, we work and live in honor of those who lost their lives on that day. Very tragic day, and we carry a lot of that with us, but we'll never forget. Thank you.
Thank you, Will. And Chief Herrmann, the fire department, did so much. I'd like you to say a couple of words, Chief.
Thank you, Councilor. As you can see, we have a lot of members here today from the fire department, police department, EMS, and to echo Deputy Chief Young's words is we will never forget the firefighters, police officers, and EMTs that gave their lives to save people, many people at the towers that day, but also the residents that lost their lives and all the people that did. We will never forget them. Thank you, Councilor.
I just gave Chief Herrmann a book that's called Last Man Down. What was it called, Chief? Last Man Down? Last Man Down, I think it's called. It's a firefighter from New York wrote a book about the fact that these firefighters went up the towers, and some of them, many of them didn't come down, but the firefighters and police. Is anyone here representing our EMTs?
Thank you. I've definitely had the pleasure of working with some people that did respond on that day. They are still here with us today working, as well as I know a lot of the men and women from the fire department and police department. So like Chief said, we will truly never forget, and it's an honor to be part of the first responders always.
Thank you, Chief Vegliante. I just want to now, it's 8:45, and I'm going to read the names. There's so many families that are still here that come out and leave memorials, and I just got a message this morning from Diana Stewart of Draper Terrace, who presided over our ceremonies 4 or 5 years ago, and Lisa Collins, her family partly from Hawaii. They're in New York today to observe, even though there's not the major observance, and the county is also having a virtual observance up at Eagle Rock. Essex County does a great job up there. So we're just here for our 9 victims, the 9 families, and Lisa Collins' family laid this wonderful, the Hawaiian lei. Every year they do this for the last 19 years. So next year, on the 20th anniversary, hopefully we'll get everyone together again to remember. And again, as Councilor Cummings and as the chief, both chiefs said, we just can't forget this. It's a terrible thing. It happened 19 years ago. We're still recovering from it. Now we've got a pandemic to deal with. We're dealing with another tragedy in our country. And if you saw the fires all out west, a third of our country is in flames with fires. So we've got to thank our firefighters, police, EMS, and all first responders for what they did in 9/11 and what they're doing now. The names of those who we lost are Michael Collins, Caleb Aaron Dack, Emmerich Harvey, Scott Johnson, Howard Kestenbaum, Robert Murak, David Prime, Ron Rubin, and Michael Stewart. And Ron Rubin was a Montclair High School graduate. There's also a monument there at Montclair High School to Ron Rubin. But all of them, we'll never forget them. September 11th, 2001. And when 2021 comes, we'll remember them again with a more formal ceremony. So I want to just thank everyone for coming out. We just do this every year, short ceremony, 8:30 to 9. Please don't forget our families and don't forget the first responders. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.